Most creatives are more in touch with their emotions, and having the impetus to write a song comes often from a large emotional drive, which might be heartbreak, it might be happiness.
With a unique blend of genres and relatable lyrics that have captivated a growing fan base, this man is making waves in the Australian music scene with his raw, authentic sound and sheer ability to capture the hearts and minds of many with his real and heartfelt knack for storytelling. The Aussie heartthrob, Tom Carty.
It was so nice that people to come up and tell me it's just given me a voice, or it's given me some clarity on the fact that I'm not alone. And that's the power of music.
From local bars, weddings and at a variety of gigs, he was a fan favourite at this year's Gympie Ute Muster, and when you hear his voice you'll understand why it won't be long before he's a household name.
Get out there as soon as you can and play some cover gigs. You're going to lose money potentially, but you can't put a value on the experience that you get from playing to a crowd.
Tom, welcome to Share.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to getting into the conversation today and hearing all things music and, obviously along your journey as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah. Looking forward to talking about it. It's good to have a platform where I've got time to talk about it. Obviously, often in radio and things like that, you've got very, very limited time. So,
yeah, and you kind of like every answer is like, I better be quick because then they're going to be saying, okay, we've got no time, and thanks for that for Tom, and enjoy your day.
Yeah, and you can play some of your song, but here's 1 minute of it, and that's it. Right, cut.
Yeah, and you went, oh, that wasn't the best bit.
Yeah, I know, and that's another thing. It's a whole. They'll put a microphone in front of you, got no control over what's happening, and it can be more detrimental than it can be good for you in the end. But that's the self-talk of a musician as well. Sometimes you just get too hard on yourself. But
yeah. Well, we're all our biggest critics, aren't we?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, tell me your story, Tom. I'd love to hear more.
Sure. I grew up in the country Victoria. I grew up on music to a degree, but Mum was probably my main influence, and she put me on various other instruments that I guess I didn't end up pursuing because I wasn't as interested in. I think one of the reasons was that you couldn't play the songs off the radio with some of these instruments like clarinet. And also, she put me into musicals, or she made me go in musicals. I think back then you kind of, you're on the fence about being embarrassed and all. And, a country boy in Victoria, that amount of time ago was, it was very sports heavy in the country. So although your friends would come to your musicals, they'd also like to tease you a bit about, being the guy on stage doing the jazz hands or whatever, which, obviously...
Wearing makeup.
Yeah, wearing makeup, wearing various outfits and, being directed to a certain point too. You kind of had to do what the director said. And but I enjoyed it. I think it was one of those things that got me out of any funk of and getting the confidence to sing and perform on stage. So I definitely look back at that time and think now that it was more positive, even if I was copying it from my mates and everything. They actually, they all come around in the end. They all say, "Oh, actually, kudos to you for going through all that, and we're so sorry that we were the way we were." I was a bit of a chameleon because I played sport as well. So I was mates with all these sports guys, but they would come and support me in their own way back then. But then after I got sent to boarding school, and Mum and Dad moved to Queensland from Victoria, and it displaced us a fair bit. And I dropped all of that. So even the school that I was at didn't offer as much creatively back then anyway. And so I dropped it all. And then after school, I just had one of those light bulb moments where I realised I was just okay at everything. I didn't want to be just okay at everything. So I picked the guitar up and taught myself how to play guitar, and it was probably just when obviously the internet was there and you had tabs or tablatures. It was another way of learning. I could kind of read music, but I dropped it for so long in terms of the theory part of it that I don't think I retained much of it, and I just had a different way of learning. And I'm sure people can resonate with that nowadays. Learning by ear was just something that I took to, and so it made more sense to me, and I learnt Stairway to Heaven, which is not the first song you learn on guitar. Try to get me to play it now. I actually probably couldn't because I haven't practiced in 15, 20 years, but it was, I think that was, it was, I can't even recall exactly why I did it, except for the fact that I felt like I was okay at everything and wanted to be really good at something. And, back then the drive was probably, I just want to meet girls, or who knows? There's so many different reasons why. And I just want to play the songs that I like and I listen to, and all that impressionable age, but also whatever drives you at that point. It's, you can't get hard on yourself about it. But I just took to guitar because I could sing with it. I could sing the songs I wanted to sing with it. I could learn these songs that I was listening to. And it became a nice little party trick and something that you felt, proud to be able to add to any social environment. And obviously it took me a few years before I played a full gig, but I was definitely guitar out around the campfire vibes for a number of years. And that was just a nice thing to be good at, and a nice thing to be able to gift to people. So it just kind of evolved from that. And it feels weird to think back and not be able to process exactly how it happened, but just almost on an energetic level, it evolved. And then I played my first gig on Hamilton Island when I was working up there and in the summers doing work for a kids club up there. And Adam Thompson from Chocolate Starfish. I don't know if you remember Chocolate Starfish.
I wasn't a fan, no.
No. Well, they had Mountain and a cover.
My brothers were.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess I vaguely remember some of those songs, but he was the sort of agent, I guess, up there at the time. And I walked into the room and I played, I think it was a Pete Murray song, and then I decided to play Mountain just to impress him, I guess. I knew the song enough to sort of reel it off pretty quickly, and he gave me my first gig anyway. So that was, and then I was playing in front of 200 or 300 people at a big staff bar up there, and played every Tuesday. And just, I think, you had that moment where because I think I was working in other jobs in line with the 4-year degree that I felt like I had to do to appease my family and parents and, all the conditioning we have. And that was the first time I had that light bulb moment where I thought, hang on a second, I feel like to a degree, maybe in my way of learning, that I've been lied to about, the fact that the education system's there to serve us all, and I'd broken the rules, and I'd made money out of something that made people happy. And I think at that point I'd been working in sports administration, and where there was a big membership base, and I was on customer service, and I just copped these calls and all these complaints, and they sort of project all their stuff on you, and you were you were like just the land, the sounding board for them all. And I didn't feel like that was where I wanted to be. And so playing the gig and making people happy and people dancing around, and I thought, I'm never doing anything else ever again.
And that's what's happened, yeah?
Pretty much. I think there was a phase out of everything else, and so I started playing gigs, and when I got back to Brisbane, so I'd moved from Melbourne to Brisbane, I started playing gigs around town, and I phased out the other work. So I went back to AFL Queensland, which I was working with kids and doing AFL Auskick, and that was more fun anyway. And it was part-time, and I was outside, and you live in Brisbane and Queensland because you want to be outside. So I was out doing things I enjoyed doing, and then I went overseas for an extended period of time, and that's London. I started, I think, again, I was starting again, and I picked up some gigs eventually, just knocking on doors, and, then more and more people in the service and the hospitality industry that were Aussies that were living over there got me gigs over there, and it snowballed over there, and then it pretty much became full-time because, I was trying to make ends meet there and doing removalist jobs and whatnot and driving trucks around London, and eventually it was just all gigs. I got a Argentinian steak restaurant called Gaucho. They had about 5 venues, so they'd just, they'd circulate me around those venues, and then I played gigs in Clapham and, Shepherd's Bush and all the classic Aussie hangouts in London, and then went to Thailand and played gigs on the islands, played in EOS, met my business partner, so I also have run booking agencies for a number of years now, and we had a booking agency together for 5-6 years. We've both gone our separate ways, but I'm still doing that on the side, so I'm still making an income out of this business, enough that I can pay for all the expenses to keep pursuing an originals career, and which is obviously, as you know now, you can't sell CDs, and it's not a physical form of income anymore, and it's very hard to make any money out of streaming. So it is a money pit. There's no doubt about it. But if I can service that with something else in the industry, which is giving younger artists the opportunity to go out and play gigs like I did, and encourage them to do that rather than doing a full-time job, or even if they're doing a part-time job and, working that in, that kind of fills my soul as well. So I've always stayed in the industry. So yeah, it's been a great, a nice evolution. But I think, now I'm living in Brizzy and trying to expand that up here, the agency as well, but getting gigs. And I have found that coming back to Queensland after a few more years living in Melbourne has been nice. So I moved up here kind of around the pandemic, and as you know, I met a girl up here. So it's been nice because I've sort of swung a little bit more, leaned back into my country roots, and I'm pursuing the country scene, and Queensland has really embraced that. I think there's a strong country influence in Queensland. So I've played a bunch of festivals up here recently and settling in nicely with the original stuff up here, whilst sort of going back and forth between Melbourne and here with the agency. And
country Tom is really making a huge comeback, right? Like, it's interesting now, like you've got a lot of like Luke Coombs and you've got a lot of Morgan Wallen, so all these guys coming in, and there seems to be this really big pull, because like, if we go back 5 or 10 years ago, the younger generation would have said, country, what's that? Like, oh no, I'm not listening to country. And now it's kind of this re-emerging, I suppose, genre that's coming through and making a big comeback, which is good for artists like you.
Absolutely. I mean, if you had your time again, I mean, obviously, 21-year-olds that are going into country now, there's part envy, but part like, go for it. That I think everything has its time and place, and the evolution of music in general, like, it's always going to sway back one way or the other. And it makes no sense that country music hasn't blossomed here and look, it has always in America, but hasn't blossomed here for longer, because it is the second biggest market for country music. I think it always has been, but you've got to go to Tamworth to even have a look in. But now, it's become more mainstream, and maybe it's just having its time. But it is also more about storytelling. So I think on a deeper level, it's nice to see that the world is embracing that on a conscious level, because I think before, 2-3 years ago, even before the re-rise of country music, a lot of us musos or songwriters were worried that the art was a dying art, and that, we were just going to listen to electronic music, overproduced music. People weren't caring about stories. It was more about how would my peers see me as cool and what I was going to listen to, and for most of the virtue signaling mentality. But I think with the rise of country music again, it also means that, the younger generation are appreciating storytelling, because that's a big part of country music. And I think that's always been a big part of my journey, is the storytelling part, because I've never really shied away from telling the truth or going deep with it. So country music does allow me to do that. So it's nice. It's great that that's coming back, and maybe I'm lucky to have that on the tail end of, whatever career. I mean, I could be going for 70 till 70 years of age, who knows? But country music allows you to do that too, because again, it's just about the story.
I always find it interesting as well, when you look at some artists and, some of the artists today that are doing really well, and, everyone's like, oh, wow, they're just doing so well. And you go, yeah, they started 20, 25 years ago. Like it's, they're an overnight success, over a quarter of a century,
Yeah. Well, they are, until you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So there are artists out there that, seem to have popped up on the scene, but they've actually been doing this for 15 to 20 years, and people maybe don't go into the back catalogue enough to realise that there is a whole story there. And, you've got a couple of guys in America, which, I guess I get an inspiration from, because, I'm not 20, but, Jelly Roll, winning awards when he's 38, 39, and Chris Stapleton's probably the most iconic male vocal that you can think of right now. And I don't know when his rise was, but it wasn't really until 5 years ago maybe, and he'd be, I guess, almost 50. So it's interesting that, that country music is, I guess, less ageist. And it just comes back to the fact that people who've lived life can tell a story, and they have that credibility to do so. It's great to hear someone super young telling a really mature story. That's a gift.
Yeah.
But generally, like, you're going to believe someone that's been through all, the ringer, heartbreak, all that. It's
interesting. It's interesting the role that technology and obviously digital social media is playing in the music scene as well, because obviously, right back to when I started downloading off Napster in the late 90s or whatever it was, like, it's interesting that technology and social media and the internet really kind of helped and then hindered music, but it's also now through the likes of places like TikTok is actually getting a younger crowd to older music, and really launching a lot of great artists and launching a lot of older genres into the younger generation. So it's kind of one of these things which has kind of helped music, but it's also kind of, hindered a little bit as well. But it's interesting how it's changed over the years. So something that a lot of musicians were kind of scared of, it's actually starting to probably, re-emerge and actually assist in some way. But I also know that it's making it more competitive as well.
I think it goes both ways. and I'm still trying to navigate that whole world. And you think you've got one platform mastered, and then all of a sudden another one comes along, and I'm trying to get my head around TikTok now, and I'm like, oh God, I just got Instagram. Well, I think I got Instagram. Maybe I haven't got that either, but and then Facebook's kind of phased out, and I don't mean it hasn't phased out, but I personally have just focused a little less than I used to on Facebook because it's other platforms to focus on, and it's tough. It's tough to try and focus on all the different platforms. We really do need TikTok.
I think Facebook lost its way years ago.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a challenge, and it almost feels like you don't have time for your music. But then, I mean, if the people that are mastered at it going really well, and the younger generation who can use TikTok well are flying. I think it's probably the main platform that has a direct correlation between streams on, say, Spotify and garnering momentum on TikTok. The others, it's a bit hard to funnel your audience through, it seems, from the other platforms, but definitely, and it might be just a demographic thing, people listening to TikTok are listening to Spotify, and so it all translates. But it's the next mountain to climb.
Yeah, I know. It just keeps, it's always building, always evolving. But Tom, can I ask you, and obviously this podcast is around telling stories, right? And it's great when we're talking about country and your genre and your love of storytelling as well. Can you talk me through the creative process that you take in regards to songwriting?
Yeah, I mean, I know that, and this is probably something I need to employ a bit more, is to sit down and make it a more of a routine to write a song. And I think there's a sticky point between writing down and making it very clinical and just having the impetus to write a song based off emotion, which obviously most musicians are like that. Most creatives are more in touch with their emotions, and the impetus to write a song comes often from, a large emotional drive, which might be heartbreak, it might be, might be happiness. So I know that I have tended to write songs on the back of something large occurring in my life. In the past, it was breakups, and it would just be an energy exchange of almost like you're not writing the song. There have been songs I've sat down and they've come out of me magically. And I know other songwriters have mentioned this kind of process as well, almost like there's another presence there. The closest you'll get if you're not so religious to a religious experience, that we're the vehicle through which, creativity sort of sweeps through. So often my process will literally be, I've got a feeling. I'll sit down, and then the chords for the song generally come through the emotion. So if I'm feeling heavy, a lot of minor chords will come out straight away. You go straight to A minor. And so I think with my process, I sort of find a core idea which will end up being the vocal, what we would probably describe as the vocal hook of the song. It may not be in the end, but it more or less is, more often than not it is. And so I'll come up with a hook that I keep going back to based on the emotion that I've felt. And that'll generally be in the chorus. And then around that chorus and around those few chords that I feel go with that hook, I'll then start to build the rest of the song around it. And traditionally, I mean, I have always traditionally written in a very poppy way, verse, chorus, bridge or middle eight, and then final chorus. But when I build the song, obviously then you've got the verses to come in, and you try and tell the story around that core idea that you've had, or that, and therefore that hook. But I really love the process of writing when you can tie in ideas at the end that segue back to the core idea.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll take a different turn, and that's what the bridge or the middle eight does. It takes a different turn, and so do the chords generally. And then the ability to tie the bridge back into the core idea to go into that final chorus and piece that together is the magic, I feel like, because when you know that you're close to finishing that song, it's the bridge where you have the light bulb moment and you're like, oh my God, if I just had that, that deviation from the initial idea, and the different chords come back in and grab hold of that last chorus. It's almost like I'd need to play a song, like, a half play a song to show you an example, which I'll do. But yeah, then you just have that, oh my God, did I just do that? That just happened. That is so cool. And I think if you don't have some of those moments, then you probably end up dropping the song. But if you do have that full circle moment with writing a song, and you get the bridge to attach itself back to the final chorus in a different way, and you segue it back in, it's an incredible feeling. And that's probably the final puzzle piece, is that bridge that works within the story, that jumps on the back of the final chorus and brings you home.
Tom, how many songs would you write, and how many wouldn't actually see the light of day?
It's a good question, actually, because I feel like a lot more of my songs see the light of day than get ditched. There's definitely more that you wouldn't pursue beyond maybe the first verse and chorus idea, and then you'd abort mission at that point instead of finishing the song in its entirety. So there's probably, let's say there's 1 in 10, 1 in 5, 1 in 10 that you might pursue to the end of writing the song. And then there's probably, for me anyway, more like 1 in 2, 1 in 3 that then, if you did finish the whole song, got recorded. Probably a lie. It's probably more like 1 in 5, because again, we're perfectionists. So if you don't go and pursue it and go into the recording studio and actually action that to become something that ends up getting released, that's one thing. But then also, all the self-doubt, and you're thinking, will that sort of resonate? It's I'd say probably 1 in 15 make it. But you ask a Bob Dylan, I mean, you could ask the guys that are like the people that are in that process, or have fully embraced the idea that you've got to be more disposable with your songwriting, which is what all the big artists are doing. They're churning out songs. And you do. I mean, I've had to take that mentality a little bit more recently, to be honest. And so, and it's a sense of play. You've got to have that sense of play with it. Okay, this is not, don't take everything so seriously. They probably, I know that my producer said he's working with Hanson. I remember Hanson, Bop. And they had their big song, and then obviously their big rise to fame was when they were 15. And he was telling me about how the lead singer of Hanson had written 50 songs, I think, and the label said no to every single one of them. It's just like, what? Okay. I mean, as an independent artist, I have that choice to be able to bring it out.
Yeah.
So that's when you get to the point where clearly it's disposable. I'm in that in-between stage, I think. I'm having fun with the disposable idea, and some of those songs end up sticking. I've now got a song coming up soon, which is literally about beer, because it's, country and beer, just, or whiskey in America works. And originally I was repelling I don't want to be like everyone else. But I had so much fun with the idea of it. And the theme, the core theme, again, the core theme was straight away. I remember when I was younger at 21 and my mates and I would say, should we go out tonight? I don't know, let's play it by beer. Playing off the saying play it by ear. And that's just such a cool theme for a song. I mean, I don't care whether I'm not drinking beer every day. I'd probably like to, advocate that message of, yes, this is a song about alcohol, but don't use it. But just that idea came to me. I thought that's brilliant. And I just built around that play it by beer idea, and it came to fruition very quickly. And so, that's an example of a song that I guess I took a more disposable approach in writing because I wasn't invested in it so emotionally, but that I allowed myself to have fun with. Whereas a bunch of the other songs that I've released, core themes about life. And
I think obviously when you're talking about storytelling and you're talking about things that are very relatable, and then if you can get something that's catchy and got a good tune and, it can, someone can start using it on TikTok and people start running their videos and stuff like that. It's interesting. I saw that video the other day where this girl was like, "Oh, Dad, Oasis, they're big on TikTok. They're doing a tour because of, they've got so good on TikTok." And the father was like, "They were good 25 years ago. What are you talking about? Like, that's why their tickets are selling out, not because of TikTok, but it's had an effect on both, right? Because their songs actually started getting picked up on TikTok and people were like, oh, wow, So it's interesting, how that is kind of bridging the gap between yesteryear and the now. What I wanted to ask you from an example perspective of your creative process was recently on Father's Day, you released a song around your experience about being a stepdad. And so talk to me about where that thought came from and that creative process. And, happy for you to, kind of play that through as well, if you like.
I think there was a certain point where, and this is always a challenging time for a family that's transitioning through that process, and it's always a first time. Well, generally speaking, there's always a first time where no one knows what's going to happen and no one knows how to approach it. But many people approach it maybe without, it may be with the ego involved, or maybe just not thinking it through enough and not putting the kids first. I know there's probably more, harsher stories than there are nice stories about these situations. And so in a way, we're lucky to be in the situation we're in, but I did still struggle with the idea, especially I don't have children of my own, that how are these kids going to embrace me? I could be the nicest person in the world. I could be, as approachable as possible. And I know I'm good with kids. So, I've worked with kids. It's just something that innately I am a kid at heart. So I've always, just been. I've kept the child within me my whole life. I think it's important. But that's not going. That could be completely out of my control when they've got their real dad, and then there's the whole dynamic of, the relationships, not worked out for various reasons. the kids don't understand that. I try and think back of what it was like for me at that age, and I wouldn't have been able to understand that. And my parents didn't. My parents were together, and I think a lot of the people within my family and in that era stayed together, whether they were happy or not. And so I was just super scared about being accepted by these kids. So a lot of my songwriting around that time, and there's not just Never Gonna Be, there's another song called Brave, which I haven't released, which will come out next year, I would say, of me articulating that fear. And so Never Gonna Be was one of those songs, and we went through that process. So that song's more a story about how it came to fruition, and actually Brave is more about the fear and me not having met the kids yet, and me listening on the phone with kids in the background, and them not finding out about me just yet, because we're in the really initial stages. And so we've got to be really, really careful, whereas Never Gonna Be was more telling the kids, I'm not going to try and be your dad, but I do want you to love me. And I'm here. I'm wanting this to work. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? But I'm making my best. I'm giving my best effort to make this work. And we've got you at the forefront of our thoughts with every measured, decision we make. So it was that yearning for them to love me, but it was also explaining to them that I'm not here to try and replace your dad, because you got a good dad, and as I mentioned before, we're lucky to have that situation where, Dad and I have a nice amicable relationship, and credit to him, for embracing me. And it made it a lot easier for me, and it's also made it a lot easier for the kids to go through their process to finally feel the love for me, which they do now, And so there were a number of first times in that little few weeks of meeting Dad first. We had to meet Dad first because we weren't going to let the kids meet me until Dad had met Dad, and then just navigating it maturely and going, okay, the kids are still at the forefront of this. How do we? There's hurt. There's a lot of hurt there. There's communication. I remember there was a first message I sent, to him saying, I know this is hard for you, but I think what you'll find is don't look at my Instagram or don't look at my social media and judge me from that, because they are, obviously you're putting your best moments up on those platforms. And I said to him, I'm pretty sure we're going to find we've got a lot more in common than we do have differences. Even though it might seem on the surface like we're different, because we're just, I think my line was, because we're just two guys in the world just trying to navigate all this, and it helps, and we communicated, and then we met the kids on a mutual holiday, and I speak about all that in that song. So I guess the song, right, speaks for itself.
Cool. Do you want to play it?
Yeah, let's give it a go.
Before we get back into the episode, from time to time you might have a burning question, a guest recommendation, a comment or some feedback, which I always appreciate. If so, I'd love to continue the conversation after this episode, so let's connect. I'm easy to find, but the best place to engage and connect is on Instagram, @TheSteveHodgson. But that's enough from me. Let's get back into the episode.
Hopefully there's no buzz. There will be a little bit, but okay. I want to put these headphones on like that. All right. Can you hear me there? All good.
Sure can.
Would you look at that? I got another match on an online dating app. a real goddess, stood above the rest. She goes first now, what else with that? Crazy first date, warm mid-state, chemistry's to pass you up, but take the van back to the sun and forget about that trip to Europe. Then she says just a couple of things I ain't adding more to the population. I guess I'd rather be safe in love, so let's navigate the situation. 'Cause I ain't ever gonna try to be your dad. You already got a good one. Never tell you that sometimes makes me sad. I wanna tell you how much I love your mom and how love always takes a different track. Never goes the way you planned it. All I ask is you try to love me back, 'cause I ain't ever gonna be your dad. Now a lot of things gone under the bridge. Your little heads wouldn't understand, yeah. We're just trying to be the best that we can be. Your mom and I, we don't have the answers. We had a triple date and it went pretty great. Your daddy put on such a brave face. We had a couple of drinks, then a couple more. Safe to say we got pretty wasted. Drove home just down the road, yeah, by the lake and past the station. Pretty dumb, never do it again though, for this love of the situation. 'Cause I ain't ever gonna try to be your dad. You already got a good one. Never tell you that it sometimes makes me sad. I tell you how much I love your mom and how love always takes a different track. Never goes the way you planned it. All I ask is you try to love me back, 'cause I ain't ever gonna be your dad. I've been through hard times too. Good times don't come for free, and if we hadn't been what we've been through, we wouldn't be who we're meant to be. How damn lucky are your mom and dad? They've got two beautiful ones. I know it'll sometimes make me sad, but then I think about how much I love your mom. I love when it took this different track. Never went the way I planned it. I ask you to try to love me back, 'cause I ain't gonna be your dad. Oh, never, never, never gonna be the one. Never gonna be your dad. No, never, never, never gonna be your man. Never gonna be your dad.
That's awesome. I love it.
Thanks, mate.
As soon as I first heard that song, I was like, there is going to be so many people that are going to relate to this song.
Yeah, definitely.
Because in the world we live in, right, there's a lot of broken families and there's a lot of step parents, and I just feel the emotion every time I hear that song. But hearing it live through here is awesome. Can I ask, Tom, the storytelling, the relatable topics that you write about, such as this one, has there been any people that have reached out to you and kind of, talk about the impact that your songs have had on them?
Yep, definitely. I had the opportunity to play the song just prior to its release at a couple of these festivals. One was at Gympie Muster, and it was actually for a sort of a competition, which is kind of a weird concept, I guess, for music to be in a comp. But one thing it was great for, the crowd that we had there was much larger than I think most of the minor stages around, even the main stage. We had a bigger crowd there listening to our songs than some of the day acts on the main stage. And they broke the record for crowds this year in general. So it wasn't a case of them not being many people at the festival. It was record crowds. So we were really lucky. We played at this, I think it was called the Dodge Tavern stage. And There'd probably be 400 people there. And so many people came up to me after that. I played a bunch of songs, but that's the one that stuck. I had probably 10 people, but more so there were 2 or 3 that came up and said, man, like, fan forever kind of thing, because you've basically just articulated what I can't. And a lot of them were saying to me, you're in a lucky position, but like, kudos that you have done that, because our situation is super messy. A lot of these people have come from country towns too. So, they can't escape this reality. They've literally got to navigate it and face it head on, because they're in a little community and people talk. And I mean, that's the community I grew up in, and I know what it's like. Even as a kid and a young teenager in Western Victoria, I know that there was just chat around town that had just, spread like wildfire. And so I had a lot of empathy for them, but it was so nice that people to come up and tell me. It's just given me a voice, or it's given me some clarity on the fact that I'm not alone, and that's the power of music. When that kind of thing happens, it doesn't matter about streams and playlisting and stuff. When you have that impact on an individual, they're the ones that are going to come back to your show over and over again and actually want to hear the same story. See if you can, see if you're telling it in a 2% different way to the last time they might have heard it. But if it's coming from you live, there's something rawer than anything else about that. They might listen to it on streaming, or even on a CD if they still buy that and your merch. But to come and listen to you telling that story live, and for them to be able to feel heard, is a pretty special thing. And that song definitely hits home with a lot of people, as you said. Regardless of the fact that
stepdad, I took on kids at 8, 10 and 13 when I was 21, right? So when I listened to that, I was like, wow, like it really, and I think, through music, it's about how it makes you feel, right? So when you can relate to it, when it's got that storytelling, and you can kind of just sit there and resonate with it so much, it just kind of, like, even just listening to it, and I've heard it a few times now, but listening to you play it there, I was just like almost choking up just sitting here, because it's just, I could just feel it so deeply, but I could also feel it in you as well, right? I could feel that, you're not just singing it, you're feeling it, right? And then the music's coming out of you.
Yeah, it's incredible. It is incredible. And when I played it at Gympie, I actually, the whole family came and camped, and I actually hadn't played it to my partner's ex. He'd never seen me play live, and I'm sitting there like second song in, trying to tell the story, and I couldn't get through it in front of these 400 people without choking up myself, because it was the first time for me to articulate. And then so I got to a certain part of the song, your daddy put on such a brave face. And I was like, I couldn't actually sing it properly.
Yeah.
I was choking up, and I couldn't look at him. And he said to me afterwards the same thing. He said, we couldn't make eye contact at that point, because it was going to be a mess. I'm going to have to stop mid-song. Right? So, yeah, God. And it does. It just like, even talking about it brings up some emotion. Yeah. Definitely.
I just love you talking about the creative process. Obviously, you launched that song, and for you to take us through that story and then play it for us, it gives listeners and people kind of tuning in just a really good, I suppose, look and a view of the creative process, but also, a little bit more around who you are, right? And what viewpoint that you're coming from in life as well.
Absolutely, yeah. there's still things that you struggle with, and I think this process also has, allowed me to sort of drop into the idea of, I don't know whether I'm going to have kids of my own,
Yeah.
But now more than ever, I've thought about the idea of it more so just because of this whole process, that I'm with someone who is a great mum. She's had her kids, so we've chatted a lot about it, and who knows what's going to happen, and we have no control over nature, but it just.
Well, I hope there's no breakup songs on in your lyrics over the next few years, and I don't think Erin wants that either.
No, exactly, yeah. No, Erin's been amazing, and she every time I have one of these situations where I'm talking about this song, or definitely with the release more so than anything, she cops a lot of inboxes about it, and she gets drained by it for good reason. So I'm sort of saying, right now I'm saying, if you cop a few more DMs saying, it's inspirational and with a heap of questions, I'm just like, sorry, Erin, I created this.
Tom, can I ask you, for aspiring musicians, for, artists sitting there, maybe just starting out, or they're trying to, kind of make it in a career, what are some advice that you would give to them?
I mean, I think nowadays it's at least a lot more accepted to pursue your creative path, and I don't know whether I would credit it completely to reality TV, but it's certainly, if there's any positive in that, it's that it's now seen as something to aspire to. But I would say get out there and gig as soon as you can. I think there is a bit of a stigma behind playing cover gigs and originals, but I think now more than ever, it's time to start, and I've got to take my own advice too. It's time to start embracing that you may need to play a wedding or a cover gig, and just blend your originals into that cover gig. I would also say to venues, encourage artists to allow them to tell their stories and play half originals, half covers, instead of it being strictly a cover gig. But there was a bit of a stigma behind, or there has been, about, if you're a cover artist, then you're going to end up just staying a cover artist, and you either do one or the other. But it's not feasible anymore. Not with the industry the way it is. Festivals going down left, right, and centre. Streaming, you're making. I think there's $1,000 sitting in my GyroStream account, for everything. Whereas I could have made that on Burke Street busking in a day with CDs back in the day. So I think now more than ever, the advice I would give is to get out there and play some cover gigs. Because more than anything, I think those people that are playing multiple cover gigs are honing their craft, whilst also honing their ability to perform in front of people. And I know the pandemic, especially for the younger generation, has generated this almost social anxiety as well. There's a lot of underlying issues from being locked up for a couple of years, and definitely for a lot of people, talking in front of a crowd, particularly singing in front of a crowd, playing a guitar or playing an instrument whilst singing, and the perfectionism of our society today, it's scary. But once you've done it a few times, you're just more worried about the equipment working than you are of actually performing. So I think that's the main advice I give, is just get out there and start playing gigs. It sounds very convenient for me to say that because I run a booking agency. But I'm trying to, from my angle for the agency thing, I'm really an advocate for artists playing their original music if they do have their own songs throughout a cover gig, and for clients and venues to allow that to happen. because I think behind,
Well, and I
being
think
allowed to tell that story is going to engage people. You can always jump back to a cover and do a 50-50.
I think one of the key things as well is you don't know who's at that wedding. You don't know who's at that gig. You don't know who you're going to connect with, who's going to go, wow, and you don't know where that's going to lead. Like, and I'm sitting here today thinking, I bought my first home and my neighbor was Erin and Troy, right?
Yeah.
And, just you meet people for a reason. You go to an event or you connect with someone. There's always a reason behind it. And you might not know exactly what it is, but it's interesting how so many things can come so full circle, right? So it's about just taking those opportunities, also making those opportunities sometimes, which may actually, in your, kind of industry, may be that you're not making any money, you're losing money, right? But that may be just the step that you need to take to actually, move forward and get that big break.
Absolutely. You take the mentality now of you're not going to make any money out of it, and then you do it for the love. I think in the past, because you could make a lot of money out of it, it's a trap, actually a trap of like falling in love with it for the wrong reasons. But now you've got no other choice. So, yes, you can make good money out of it, but I think more so you've got to take the mentality of you're going to lose money potentially when in the wash up, but it's you can't put a value on the experience that you get from playing to a crowd, and as you say, you never know who's going to be out there. The more you play, the more chance you're giving yourself of being seen by people that, and it might not be a label, it could be, or you may not want to be with a label. You might want to be independent. Who knows? But it could be. There'll be someone out there that wants to give you a gig, and then it can snowball once you play enough, and then you get the experience. So it's like the 10,000 hours thing, the Oasis 10,000 hours thing.
Yeah,
you do the 10,000 hours. It just
Tom, talk to me about through your life, like who's been your biggest teacher?
I mean, I think my parents would have to be. I think, like, maybe not on a conscious level, but they've always encouraged me. They've never. I think that early on there was a propensity to want me to go and do the full-time job thing and whatever was safe. But even they've grown. You don't. Everything's a first time. Like, when you're a parent, you've got no rule book on, and that's the same with my situation. Going back to how we've gone through things with this situation, but also just as a parent, it's the first time you're doing it, and you don't have a rule book. So I understand that you make mistakes, and then you learn from them, and then you evolve. And I think watching how proud my parents are of what I do now is a beautiful thing. Like, I think Dad's always embraced it because he couldn't really understand. He wasn't as musical, so he couldn't understand it. So, but I make sure I play Piano Man for him every time he's at my gig. And how happy that makes him. And Mum, obviously, her influence in music, although it wasn't in the area of music that I ended up in, was a huge. That I guess I see her as the greatest teacher in that sense. But then like, you get those influences from various stages in your life as well. So I can off the top of my head, I can really only think of my parents because they've been there the whole time. All the way down to Erin, because Erin has taught me to embrace my country roots. She's a country music fan, and it wasn't really because country music just got popular again. It was just that was serendipitous that happened at a similar time. But
she just likes a good outfit and a good pair of boots. That's all it is.
Exactly, yeah. And she's getting songs about that too now. I've literally just written one or two. Even the beer song is more about her than it is about the beer. It's just like, I'm a sucker for a country girl in a pair of jeans, the kind with rips in the thighs and up a couple more in the knees. And then there's another one called that I've just called Unicorn. Where I've just said, basically, how are you so attractive and yet you cool as well? And that comes down to being a mum. I think. Once you have kids, you're all leveled out. Like, you don't put up with the bullshit.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, you're right. It's but yeah, she's also been a great advocate for my path into leaning back into my country roots. I repelled it for years. Like, I did repel the country thing for years because, as you said, like, it was not seen as something. Even like I had a sort of a manager at one stage who encouraged me or discouraged me to do country because it just wasn't, unless you're moving to Tamworth, it was back then, 10 years ago, whatever, there wasn't a market for it. Either move to Nashville or try pop or, try whatever else it was. And that actually sort of derailed me in a way. But also, I was too young and probably impressionable at the time that I took that advice and didn't sort of stick to my guns. So it's almost, it's a full revolution or sort of full circle moment to come back to country, because I feel like you never actually lose your country roots, even though I feel like maybe I did for years.
Yep.
My parents left when I was 16. I grew up on a farm. And maybe I just didn't feel worthy to be a country musician, given I wasn't a farmer. I didn't become a farmer. I got that, just the recession at that time pulled us away from our farm and 3 generations of farming, and mum and dad had to sell up. So again, it's a full circle moment because it's kind of acknowledging that you never lose your country roots. And I meet country people all the time still, and you just can tell straight away they're from the country,
Yep.
So Erin has that in her from Inverell, but been in Brisbane for years. But you, again, born in the country, and you kind of never really lose that. And so she's obviously been a big teacher for me in recent years. But I mean, every step of the way is some kind of learning, and there's a teaching.
Tom, can I ask, what's a goal of yours? What's something that you're aspiring to? Is it a stage you're standing on? Is it a festival you're at? What is it? What will you get to where you'll pinch yourself and just go, shit?
Yeah, it'd definitely be a main stage. I feel like as time goes on, you do try to let go of that dream or idea, and it's probably less about the fame, right? It's less about the materialistic stuff and more about, as we said before, the influence you have on the individuals that come up to you and say, this has touched me in a great way. But yes, look, I mean, I would not say no to being on the main stage at Gympie Muster or, like Tamworth. Obviously Tamworth works a bit differently, but
Nashville.
Nashville, yeah, Nashville. I mean, I'd have to take the whole family over then, or just, do a stint over there. Like, obviously I have some kind of plan, I'd love to go over there and spend a little bit of time there. But yeah, again, America would be amazing. That's a huge mountain to climb, but I think I've always felt like my songs are strong enough to do it, and my songwriting is strong enough. Yes, there are the powers that be in the industry that may make it tough because, like a lot of it is influenced on major labels and being in the clique in Nashville, but it is also the hub of songwriting, and I think a lot of it revolves around collaboration with other songwriters, but at the core of it, I know that I back myself with my songwriting, my ability to articulate my thoughts into poetry and then putting them to music. So I know
Have you got a dream collaboration?
Keith Urban would be good.
Yeah?
Yeah. Keith,
if you're listening.
Yeah, Keith, if you're listening.
Hit Tom up.
Come back to Caboolture, mate, and I'll do the drive up. It's only 45 minutes away, so he came back recently and did a show, and some more intimate shows. But I remember getting asked to do the voice once, and it was the year that he left.
Oh no!
And they said, and they wanted me to, audition and everything, and they said which judge would you choose if you were ever on the show? And I said, Keith Urban. And they said, well, he's not coming back this year. And I said, who else? I was like, no one else? Like,
yep.
Just Keith Urban, really? Like, I think Leanne Rimes is on it now, but, and then that was it. Nothing else sort of came of that. But that was definitely, you want to be still, even on those shows, you'd still want to be, if you were ever going to take that plunge, you'd want to be sticking fairly true to yourself in that sense. So,
through like obviously your influences, your idols that you've looked up to, past and present, like if you could choose just one person, obviously you've mentioned Keith then, but if you could choose one person that you'd just love to jam with and just sit on a chair on a stage and just jam with, who would it be? Dead or alive?
Neil Young, maybe. It'd be cool to be amongst Fleetwood Mac, wouldn't it?
Yep.
And also, like, I've got to give credit to like other roots, my initial guitar roots, and this is like this simplified my guitar playing, but in the nice way, in the right way. Was more, I sort of started on the surf rock culture, like the acoustic thing that was going on. And Jack Johnson was a big, I could play, when I was younger, I could play every single song of his off 3 albums.
Yep.
I think I could play 30-something songs. I mean, if you sat there and just jammed out Jack Johnson songs on a beach, and I'll go, banana pancakes. I mean, if I was with John Mayer, it's too hard. Like, he's just too much of a virtuoso. I just feel like I was a fish out of water. John Mayer's incredible, but that was the era. John Mayer, Jack Johnson. And Jack Johnson is just that simple, chill dude that...
Just coastal vibes, just chilled, laid back, just sitting around a campfire,
right?
Enjoying a nice drink and just enjoying the atmosphere, enjoying the environment.
Yeah, that was me for the 5 or 10 years. Just sitting around on a beach, playing to a bunch of people, probably trying to impress a girl, and that they're great memories. Jack Johnson was a massive influence on me continuing to play guitar because he simplified it. He made it a viable thing within your own head. You can be done, and it doesn't have to be complicated. It can just be palm muting, as they call it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Tom, for those that want to reach out to you, connect with Tom Mac Music, talk to you about maybe some of your booking services as well, connect with you personally, what's the best way to do that?
So we're actually rebranding at the moment to Aura Music. So at the moment it's called Oola Rock Music. It's just oolarockmusic@gmail.com, and also the website would be www.oolarockmusic.com.au, is it? No, the thing is, because we've actually rebranded, we're now going to be auramusic.com.au. So by the time this actually comes out, maybe that's where to direct people in terms of other artists anyway. That's our new platform that we're building at the moment. I'm just in the process of getting artists audio, and then we'll sync to video and get videos and whatnot up on the platform. but Aura Music. So that's actually on Instagram, Aura Music AU at the moment. It's we haven't launched it yet, so there isn't a lot to see just yet, but that's definitely where to connect. So yeah, if you're a young artist looking for gigs, or if you're a venue, because now, like, expanding into Brisbane, we've already got 2 venues called Soak Bathhouse, which is actually like a bathhouse where you do cold plunge and steam rooms and saunas and whatnot. And we do their Soak and Sound, which is on a Wednesday night, and book artists there. So I've started to build quite a catalogue of artists up here. So if you're a venue looking for live music, we've definitely now got some great artists on the books. And I've got plenty of PA gear. We try and provide the PA gear as well. So, and I can't wait for the website to be out. It looks amazing. We took on a branding agency called Red Kite, who've done an amazing job of rebranding. We did a 4-hour workshop with them, talking about everything to do with messaging, the core values of where I'm exactly kind of like this, you know, what was my background, and, you know, creating colors and logos based on all that, and, you know, focus on the artist and capping commissions and, you know, trying to clean the industry up, because, you know, there are a lot of sharks out there, and having the idea of looking after the artist as the forefront was a huge message in that branding. So I feel comfortable with Aura Music as, you know, representing that as well, as a name.
Yep.
So that'll be out in the next couple of months. And then
you've got your personal channels, yeah.
And then, yes, of course. So that's all under Tom Mac Music. So any handle that you can think of, I've pretty much streamlined it to the point where I've got Tom Mac Music with a C. People think that it's CK, but TOMMAC Music, Tom Mac Music, and you find me on those handles on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. I think even, you know, things like SoundCloud, and then Spotify is just Tom Mac. There's Tom McDonald's out there. I think there's a Thomas Mac who's in the country industry who's smashing it at the moment as well. So Tom Mac with a C. Yeah, reach out.
Perfect.
I'm really keen to get into the festival scene more, and also look out for all the new releases. Play It By Beer is coming out November 8th. Never Gonna Be is out now, and it was released September 6th, so about a month ago. There's an EP on the back of it all called No Stopping Us, and that'll be on the back of the final track, which will be called Nomadic. It's about me and my van life, and, you know, life just before I met Erin and gallivanting around the countryside. But yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to be bringing out new music. And thanks for having me as well, and allowing me to have the time to ramble about my music, which is what I'm best at doing.
No, I'm appreciative of your time. It's been great to listen, have a different theme on the podcast as well, and really be able to showcase your story, your love of storytelling, and also, you know, just spread that awareness of Tom Mac and what you do. And, you know, I know you're going to have a few more fans after this episode, I'm sure. And, you know, we'll keep pushing it out there. But I'm looking forward to continuing to connect with you. Just seeing you rise and standing on that stage at Gympie Muster, main stage.
Let's make it happen.
All right, mate. Sounds good.
Thanks, Steve.
We'll keep in touch. Thanks, mate.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks again.